Hello, my name is Ian Hink, and my review copy was provided by PlayStation.
I am Brad Ellis, and my review copy was provided by PlayStation.
I am Ben Moore, and my review copy was provided by PlayStation.
I'm Michael Huber, and my review copy was provided by PlayStation.
I'm Michael Damiani, and my review copy was provided by PlayStation.
Final warning, spoiler mode is activated right now.
Spoiler mode, final warning, spoiler mode, activated.
Buckle up, everyone. We finally get to talk about Death Stranding without worrying about spoilers. He frees Lou at the end.
Lou!
That's the baby.
Lou!
He suddenly, inexplicably names it Lou halfway through the game. Unexplained until later.
It's explained.
Yeah, but like when he does it, he just suddenly is like, that's Lou. I'm like,
Right.
it is?
Yep.
Oh man, the after credit stinger got me. Anyway, I just thought it'd be funny to spoil the very ending. But yeah, we have contractually not been allowed, NDA'd until the 12th, to not even talk about anything post chapter 2 or 3. Now we can. Review copy provided by PlayStation.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think sometimes we should do this. We should say what spoiler mode kind of is before we begin. We're not going to worry about we're not going to just summarize the entire story. We're not going to go through beat by beat in order. That's not what this is really about. This is just a discussion where we don't have to worry about spoiling this game. That's what this is. So it'll take whatever shape it wants, but that's the kind of premise of spoiler mode. I think some people think it's like, let's just summarize the whole story again. That's not what this is. This is just us talking about a game without worrying about spoiling it. But yeah, that said, I thought this game was pretty all right. What are your first initial thoughts now that you can talk about anything? Anything?
I was heavily
Damiani?
confused.
Huber?
You were heavily confused?
Heavily confused.
I was not confused at all. That's
Yeah, I was
interesting.
confused.
It was a little strange for so long in the game having people refer to these proper nouns and terms that, like, as matter of fact, and you were kind of like loosely knew what they were about, but didn't fully understand them until they were like revealed. It was kind of interesting to see how that played out. I was like,
Did they ever tell you what BT or Dooms stands for? I don't think they ever did.
I don't know if Doom's actually supposed to stand for anything, but obviously BT is. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Do you know, Ben?
Yeah, so I read the emails and the interviews and all that stuff, and that's where they go into a lot of the details. And I'm pretty sure there was a Beached Thing email, but I also went in to the game knowing that it stood for Beached Thing, so I don't know if
Beached
I'm...
thing?
Yeah, BT stand for
Beach thing.
Beached Thing.
That's so
Beached thing.
funny. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yep. So yeah, I don't know if I went into it with that knowledge or if it actually reveals it in an email or something. But
I'm a little underwhelmed that it stands for thing.
I mean,
Beach
that makes
thing.
total sense.
It
for me,
totally
Kojima
makes
game.
sense. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. Didn't mean to derail you, dummy.
No, that was all. I just want to say it was like it felt a little bit like the beginning of. So I never read Game of Thrones, and like when I started watching that show, so much was dropped on me lore wise, like these locations and names. It felt like that, but I always expected, hey, this is gonna be like the great payoff that I'm gonna
Right.
get to understand this stuff. And I liked how they never really hit you over the head with an explanation. They just kind of through conversations, you started to just like. You became educated about what the Death Stranding was. It's like they don't sit there and just tell you it. It's like this is this event that happened, and like, oh, that's great. What are even BTs not knowing what they really were, like their
Right.
proper name, you knew what they were, and I like that about that. I like that there was a little bit of you not always knowing how the world worked at first, and just getting to dive into that world and just like explore it and being something that was completely alien to me. I love that feeling about it.
Well, and that's good, like, fantasy world building, right? Where it doesn't make sense for characters to just over-explain things that they would already know to each other, you know?
yeah, man, that's interesting that you guys feel that way because I was actually hoping that Death Stranding would do that more or do it a little bit better. There were some things that felt humorously unexplained, like
Yeah.
the mules were given
Yeah.
just very, like a very...
They were like, what,
I really
they're
wanna talk about-
born
Or you're
out
just
in the wild, they
you're
said?
expected
Yeah.
to just take it
Right,
and
right.
accept it. Yeah.
But then there were other things that I thought the game really was beating you over the head with it in ways that it didn't need to, that kind of took away from its point. Like you go to so many people and they have so many similar reactions to the chiral network where I felt like I was just being told the same thing about what you're doing in a different way. And I think in some sense that repetition is part of the game's message, but there were definitely conversations that felt empty to me and not very purposeful.
Well, and like you and I were talking about this where it's like, normally in a game like this, you become a legend over time, whereas in this, almost immediately you're some kind of like delivery Christ figure to these people.
Yeah.
Like you're a legend at the beginning of the game. They're like, oh my
Right.
God, the Sam Porter Bridges is here? I've heard about the legend himself. And it's like, you have?
Yeah, so it's actually an interesting parallel to Metal Gear Solid. So if you play Metal Gear Solid 1, that's how they talk about Solid Snake.
Yeah,
They go,
yeah.
I can't believe I'm getting hit on by the famous Solid Snake, right?
Right.
But that works because when there's enough of them going into the history of Solid Snake, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, Zanzibar, okay, he did this. This was a huge thing. There's a reason why people look up to Solid Snake as a legend. Where Sam, it was never as convincing to the point where it almost felt insincere, where it was like, I'm delivering packages and I'm being treated like this Christ figure, and I realize that couriers have importance in this world that's so isolated. But the way that they talk about you felt a little artificial in a way that was hard to...
I'm trying to remember, don't they just say like at the beginning of the game when you're first starting, like he always gets the job kind of done thing? That's why he's like getting more famous. Then I feel like he got more famous though, like once he was enrolled by
Yeah.
Bridges to actually like be the one to do this and go out and connect everybody.
Because he's
Yeah.
connecting
Then
it all the
people
way.
started hearing about that, I guess.
It pretty much happens right away because I played through the game and then I did the beginning again, and
Oh, okay.
like even before you really get anywhere,
He's still, like,
there's-
already
they're
well-known.
treating
Okay.
you pretty highly.
I really wanted to bring up the mules really quickly.
Let's talk about the
So,
mules,
because
which also maybe stands for something.
because of my wild history with Kojima and Kojima doing crazy things like, hey, check the back of your CD case. I don't know if it was in a document or what, but something mentions, or in a cutscene, just about how the mules deliver so many things that they get insane and they just can't stop delivering.
Yeah, that's what they live for.
Yeah.
They
They
were
become
saying.
addicted to getting and receiving.
So I thought if I did too many side quests or like too many deliveries, that like I would turn into a mule and that would be like a twist or something. That is where
I
my
love
head
that,
was.
Huber.
That's awesome.
That is where my head was at.
Who knows? Maybe you just haven't
Yeah,
done
keep
enough.
going,
Keep
Huber.
trying.
You
Let
haven't
us
done it
know.
yet.
Because they
Let
like
us know.
they like say it's like, dude, you gotta not deliver too much. You get too close to it. It's like, oh.
That's funny. The mules thing is so hilarious because I think like day 1 or 2 into playing this, I think I messaged Ben and I was like, I can suspend my disbelief, but like people who are addicted to packages is maybe a little too far-fetched for me. But then like I realized a couple of days later when I was like having things delivered on Amazon Prime and it like was like a couple hours late, I was like, what the hell? And I was
Right.
like, oh my God, it's
you're a
true.
mule, dude.
It's real.
Right.
I'm a mule.
In the game, they talk about people's jobs getting replaced. They talked about automation
Yeah.
basically, and how people responded to that and basically fought to get their jobs back. And it's a really interesting and contemporary thing
Yeah.
that we're currently living through. But it's one of those things that I think Death Stranding kind of like touches on without ever really committing to it or going in a satisfying way. And I imagine it's hard with as many things that Death Stranding wants to talk about. Obviously, you have to choose a focus. But what they were doing with mules and what it felt like they were trying to say didn't quite get fully developed.
Yeah, there are a lot of really funny kind of things like that in this game. Like I was thinking, and I'm not like a philosophy major or anything, but I was thinking about what is it called, moral objectivism, the Ayn Rand philosophy that's like pretty deeply flawed if you look at it. But then I was like, this game sort of exemplifies it in a weird way where it's like, I'm building this road because I want this road to be here, but it also is benefiting everyone else. And I'm like, I know that's probably not the exact message he was going for. I think he's really going for more of a communist kind of like, or like everyone's lifting each other up kind of a message.
I did have the feeling of like, hey, other people, like we need these roads.
Yeah.
Where I was like kind of relying on them. I couldn't without being able to like fully communicate. in my mind, I did have that thought of like, hey, everyone, come on, like let's come together and let's build these roads.
Well,
Like that was a
mine
cool
was-
thought to have.
There must have been some kind of a glitch in my game because I built 3 sections completely alone and no one was contributing anything to them. And then I restarted my game and then the entire road was finished. And I was like, oh, okay. It just like wasn't updating.
Yeah, dude, maybe.
So yeah, I don't know. But
I-
it felt great when I was like, shit, the whole road's here.
I talked about it in the review, and the phrase that I used was it felt like sometimes people were guardian angels, and I think that sensation is very accurate because I was just so incredibly appreciative of people that I had never met
Yeah.
time and time again throughout the game. Like if somebody placed a crucial zip line, which those
Zip
are
lines were
amazing.
so
Zip
good.
lines,
And then
yeah.
this huge road, and I'm just riding on it. I'm like, this is going so smooth because of the like what other people did, or even something as simple as a ladder. And it was like, holy shit! I feel like I am interacting with people more deeply in a video game than I have in like forever. Where it's like it's so easy in so many games to be like, okay, you guys are just here to help me complete my dailies.
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
way,
yeah.
you know, that's being overly reductive. But and obviously, the more you put in, the more you get out. But it just felt very natural in Death Stranding in a way that like I cannot get over.
It felt the roads specifically because they are the most concrete example of like a big community project of like trying to get from one whole side of this whole middle area to the other side. The zip lines I love, and there was another player whose name was like Posh Alligator or something.
I know Posh Alligator.
Yeah. And like they and our minds worked in similar ways because I was completing their zipline runs like half the time. And that's where it get the tech behind this game gets really interesting because I really don't understand. And I hinted at this on Frame Trap, but I didn't want to say zip lines. But I was like, there were so many times where I was completing someone else's partially begun zipline track, but I'm like, certainly in their game, they had someone else's zipline or put a zipline here also, and like they already had a complete run. But I'm in my game finishing out the run, you know what I mean? So it's like I wonder how the game chooses, because it doesn't seem like the game ever gives you just a full zip line from like coast to coast. Because at the end of the game, I had already built the zip lines out. So like when you have to go back from the entire East Coast or West Coast to the East Coast at the end of the game, I ziplined through almost all of the game because I had taken the time to like, because I was like through Hartman's lab area, I'm like, fuck this. I don't want to go through this again. I'm ziplining the hell out of this now because
So
I
you
know
did
if
that
I have
area.
to, if I have to come back. So I was able to zipline from the East Coast or West Coast all the way through snow, all the way back to, I think, like the not even, the distribution center east of Mountain Knot. And then I had to take a car because it broke down a little bit, but
Yeah, it was interesting because like I don't know the full understanding of the tech behind it, but it was interesting how it's still, even to that, it wasn't unlimited. There was still a currency behind it, like the bandwidth. And in the first opening area, that's where I felt in the pre-ending, like chapter 15, basically the cool way they explain a lore way for having a post-game content.
when you're two weeks
Before
you-
the end of the game,
which
is
is
interesting.
smart. And the
Yeah,
ending was
I appreciated
really
it.
nice. I
appreciated it.
But
I spent the most time in there building the zip lines out because you couldn't build roads in that area. And I'm like, I'm going to do this because, one, I was hoping that my efforts would pay off in other people's games.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I was also, every time you just, like, I would demolish someone else's thing to make bandwidth, it said it will only affect your game. So, like, you can't demolish other players' stuff and it disappears from other games,
Right.
people's games. So I was like, it's interesting how they're handling this. But it was really interesting and fun to come across someone who had already built a portion of it, but it's like, I don't like the line of sight of this. Like, you could actually hit more of these. I must have spent like 5 hours like trying to build like the optimal zip line path to like every single distribution center or just like base, like from coast or end to end of that first zone and stuff. But I haven't touched it in like 2 weeks, so I'm curious because it degrades
they
and
all
you got to
time
keep it up.
fall out?
I'm
Yeah.
curious if it's still there and stuff.
well, and
Yeah,
like
'cause it's,
with
living.
a late game thing like the zip line, certainly you don't, like, if I'm jumping into the game right now and like there are people who've been playing it for a few days or a month in our case, I don't want to see a zip line until I know they're in the game, right? So I wonder if the game doesn't load other people's zip lines.
I don't think it shows it until
you've
you
unlocked it. Yeah, it must.
I would hope.
Yeah,
And then,
that would,
like-
defeat a
But
lot
in
of
the
the game.
right, and then in the middle zone, like with the roads, they I mean, I know you don't get other people's stuff until you activate the chiral network. But if you activate the chiral network, does it then start your roads being able from that point to be upgraded? Or if the road's already built, I wonder if it just shows up suddenly and you just have a road.
I mean, I think that speaks to one of Death Stranding's strengths is how it presents its mechanics over time. And I actually think that the game really deserves a lot of credit for this, because the way that I thought about deliveries just sort of subtly changed without the game getting in my face and being like, okay, now we're going to explain. Like, it wasn't so heavy-handed about it, where I got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm just like delivering better because I've learned through experience, and very slowly, like, you've given me new tools at like a very good clip, and the environment has gotten a little bit harsher. And so it felt like a very organic process of learning. And what you're speaking to with things being revealed in the world, like encountering roads and generators and zip lines, all of that stuff felt very natural. It wasn't just like this moment where I felt like the entire game was dumped on me. It was a very nice, slow and revealing process. And I think the way that they present your interactions is also really good. Like, there would be moments where I'd be in the middle of nowhere completely by myself, and you just see that little scroll like, somebody likes your thing. Somebody went across your thing. And
Somebody
you're just
used
like,
your
oh.
road. Yeah,
I used your
cool.
rope so many times, man.
I was like, that feels good.
Yeah.
But it's not like so distracting.
Apparently,
that they're
one of my
notifying
ladders is in 6 different reviews. Someone told me on
nice.
Twitter.
Yeah. It was a good
And
ladder.
I was like, yeah.
I mean, again, going off that, like, I just loved how knowing that there was a community aspect out there to the multiplayer changed just the way I played over time. I stopped bringing out ladders. I stopped bringing certain things because I relied on the goodwill of other people that I just gotta, if I can't find a path forward very easily, let me just look around the corner here. Someone probably dropped something around here. And that was this, and like this carrot, the dangling carrot for me was just like, keep exploring around here because someone probably found a better crit path than I. And I love that, seeing what there would be like someone who put like a rope down, but then someone put a ladder here. It's like someone tried to I like seeing the different ways people were tackling the different obstacles. Yeah.
And like the flip side of that too, like I would always bring like 3 zip lines everywhere because I'm like, I'm gonna build zip lines for people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna zip line the hell out of this thing. Like there was one part right after you meet Mama where there was a mission for her where you had to go down and get some stuff by that big thick river, wide river, big thick river, and it's super deep. And so I was like, okay, this is a pain in the ass, so I'm gonna like make sure I build a zip line across this big river for people, you know? And that just felt really fun and
that's
good.
cool.
That river, I know exactly what you're talking about. I
Yeah.
feel like that was one of my biggest challenges in the game, is figuring out
Right by
how
that
to-
waterfall.
Yeah.
I was like, I think this is parts for this.
Bummed that that there was just an invisible wall next to the waterfall. Like I climbed all the way up there. I'm like, there's gonna be some funny thing behind this waterfall, like a cave. It's gonna be sweet.
Yeah, you
Nothing.
mentioned that, Ian, and I tried that too.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
I was a little bummed about that, but
It's funny how the game sort of naturally works out, where I feel like there'd be times where it's like, oh man, I've been in this rain for so long and my packages are degrading, and like at just the right moment I would find one of those time fall structures and it would repair my things. And that kind of sensation of being saved at just the right moment felt perfect. Like there wasn't too much stuff when we were playing, but there was enough that it felt meaningful to engage with, and you like were thankful for
I actually wonder. I do kind of want to pop back in just to see if the density of other people's stuff is higher, or if the game caps it at a certain
It's
amount.
probably
'Cause, like,
servers with like 32 people or 64
but yeah,
people
because
or
I mean, I
something.
feel like when we were playing it, it was the exact perfect amount of other people's stuff, you know. And I hope that it's about the same, even though the game is live now.
It's probably like a small number because I never saw
instanced.
anything from Damiani or Brad or anyone else. I saw you and you.
I got to a point where I
I
started
saw
putting a lot of
stuff
stuff
from
down
Ian,
because everyone already
yeah.
built everything, and I was like,
Got
well,
it.
I was just mostly just doing road stuff at a point.
Love roads.
Yeah,
They feel so good.
I took your bike. You left
Yeah.
the bike somewhere. I was
Yeah.
like,
I had to leave a bike a couple of times. I
Yeah.
was bummed about it.
the first time I had to leave a bike, it was a really interesting moment.
I never left one behind, dude. I rode them till
Yo.
they blew up. Yeah, every time. Every
Brad,
time.
like I felt like I found new and innovative ways to
Yeah.
like cross terrain.
It was like Skyrim all over
It was
again.
like
Yeah.
super rocks. We are going over the challenge accepted.
Because the game
game
does
tells you, yeah.
Yes, the game
Yes.
does issue a challenge to you, and it's like, some of these areas you're gonna need some skill, and it's
Yeah.
like, all right,
Yeah.
game,
Advanced,
okay.
advanced techniques.
Yeah.
Well, but the other thing that's interesting about this game is because at first the distribution centers have a myriad of like they have myriad materials for you to use to build all these things, and I figured, okay, so super late game, like there are going to be places that have nothing, and that is sort of to an extent true, but I never felt myself. I didn't need to do the thing I was afraid I'd have to do, where I'd have to go out and collect a bunch of metals and bring them to a distribution center.
Well,
'cause that
collecting a
seemed
bunch of
tedious.
metal, like the weight that it adds to
God.
definitely making a choice.
Like
Nothing
there were,
like a 10-foot tall.
yeah.
Just so much packaging.
I
That's
have
the
to
best.
ask this then. I never used this once. Those floating transports
Oh,
that they
you never
kept
used the
telling you to
transport, dude?
use.
They're so good.
Yeah, they're so
like-
cool.
People are like,
I only
just,
used it like the one time to
people are
build
like,
that
when you got
shelter.
like this heavy
Yeah.
shit for these large deliveries, I just because of like. Especially in the first area, because of the zipline stuff I built and trucks and stuff, I was just
built-
like loading everything and using vehicles so much throughout the game. I just strategically placed them as best I could without going out of range, because the whole thing about stuff vanishes if you go too far away
Yeah,
from
yeah.
it, which was interesting. I'll say that about it. But at the same time, I never felt the need to have. I was waiting for this like point in the game, like you absolutely have to use these
Once I
transport
got-
things. And I never felt the need to.
Once I got like the power boot or
Legs,
the power
yeah.
loading,
Power
I got like
skeleton,
I got level 3 of
locked
that.
in forever.
Oh, gosh,
and
yes.
that was it. That was
Dude,
it.
so
GG.
good.
That
GG.
was the engineer was the
Yeah.
first one I maxed out, kind of accidentally by just picking up stuff. I got 5 stars with him
Mm-hmm.
immediately, and had the power armor 3, and I was like, this is awesome. The
I feel
power
like I
skeleton.
used all the exoskeletons.
The run one, dude, is so
run.
cool.
I didn't use the speed
The
one.
snow
much.
one.
Yeah.
The
all
snow one.
so
yeah,
sick.
that one's good too. The
Yeah.
all-terrain
Yeah.
one is
Yeah.
And
necessary.
That's something that I think is to Death Stranding's benefit is you can deliver it however you want.
Right.
Really, like you're not really pigeonholed into a certain way, and so it. Whether you are or not, it doesn't really matter because it sort of feels like you're kind of finding your own style and your own rhythm, and I think that's kind of bubbling to the surface throughout this conversation. I think the flip side of that, and where it wasn't as strong, is when it came to combat.
Yeah.
Where like with traversal and stuff, I felt like, oh, okay, I've encountered this problem, or I want to prepare to something. I felt like I was thinking about it a little bit more carefully, and I felt like the enemy, the way that you fight enemies and then what enemies actually do wasn't interesting enough to kind of get the gears turning in the same.
Yeah,
way.
not enough changes over time in the gameplay, I think. And like you were saying, though, those traversal challenges still made me think all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really good point. But I think because not enough changed in the gameplay, halfway through the game, I started to feel fatigued, and that directly affected my engagement with the story. And then I started kind of like, all right, like let's get it going here, because the game itself was repetitive and not pushing back or not changing enough.
Yeah.
So that kind of hurt the flow of the story overall for me.
Well, and sort of to both of your points about the traversal and the flow of the game, I couldn't say with a specific example in Frame Trap because I didn't want to spoil it, but the perfect example of what I was trying to say in that, how the progression felt more like a sine wave than a hill, where it's like the first part of the game, it's really hard to move a higher amount of weight. Then you get the power skeleton, and your weight limit goes up, so you're like, oh, I'm breezy as hell. I can go wherever I want. Right. And then they introduce, the snow, and then you slow back down again, and your traversal gets really slow. And then you get the all-terrain skeleton, which lets you then walk over the snow again. So it feels like it's a weird, like, stutter step progression, kind of, where it's the same sort of challenge kind of three times.
You get to a point where it's tough and they help you out a little bit, then you get to a new point again, it's tough.
Which
they
is
help you out
weird
again.
because it feels like the same challenge, not really being changed in a weird way, because it's like weight limits and hills used to be a problem, then they weren't, and now it's just weight limits and hills because of snow are a problem, but it feels kind of the same.
Right.
And
I get that.
and the combat, is just like it doesn't change. You can using the strand is really good, but otherwise you can just straight punch entire camps
Yeah,
of
I did.
dudes.
Oh yeah.
Which I've done several times. Even the lethal guys, you just run up to them and go, pff, pff, and then you're fine. And it's like, I know that the point of the game is not combat.
For sure, but it
so-
is it super fair, but it is a lot of the game. No, relatively. There's
Yeah,
a
10,
fair
20%,
there's a good amount of combat encounters in this game.
Right.
And it wasn't like bad. It was just so easy.
And not the easiness. I was thinking about it a lot since our frame drop discussion, and like, yeah, it was easy, but the easiness didn't, because I was thinking about like Assassin's Creed and why like it's kind of okay there, and it's just like, I don't know, maybe because you keep getting stronger gear in that, so it like serves a purpose, whereas this combat just like never really changed.
I mean, you got stronger gear in Death Stranding just in a different way.
You do get the gun and the rope.
And you get like normal guns,
but after
the non-lethal ones.
But after you get the blood gun and the rope, like that's all you need for the rest
And
of
the bola gun, you are god.
The rope.
Yeah, like that's it. So I think just because it didn't change enough is why I ended up having a bigger problem with it.
The sensation that I get with the combat, because you get cool things. You get things like the bola gun is fun to use.
The bola gun is great.
You get that gun where you can like shoot it out and like pull packages.
Oh, I never used that.
Yeah,
The sticky gun?
Yeah.
And
I forgot about
it's
that.
like, oh, there's some pretty creative and like fun to use things here, but it feels like an afterthought. Like it feels like this entire game was built to be this game that cultivates a certain feeling that ties into the themes of the story. Like there's a way that like the core of the game, the traversal and the deliveries and the packages and the whole system, everything seems built around it. And it also happens to have combat.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I get it, and I think I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to there's like this disruptive element that we were talking about to kind of combat the thing, but it wasn't. It didn't work. It almost felt like a separate thing.
I had such a cool, like there were like 2 or 3 times that did give me that Souls feeling when like some freako lizard squid comes out of the ground and all of a sudden it's some huge high stakes battlefield. I had these threatening feelings, but then after like that happens a couple times and it just kind of like flops around.
Yeah. Well, and that's the
just
funny
like,
thing
all
with
right.
combat in this game.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I was never like angry at the game for having simplistic combat because it was so simplistic. I didn't want it to be harder because it would have just gotten annoying to have to like try again. Like I don't think I ever died because of combat or a BT. And like if I had, I probably would have been like, ugh, I have to do this again.
The BTs were actually way more frustrating to me than the mules because there were several points throughout the whole game where it would be like, as you described, you were kind of talking about those moments where it kind of worked for you. I had those with BTs where I'd be like, oh shit, because I didn't see them, and then it'd just be like the handprints behind you.
Yeah.
My heart I would go like,
Yes.
oh. And then that would just quickly dissipate because you'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to hold my breath. Like it became a little formulaic, but the way that it was presented was effective. It just needed a little bit more to
like a
it.
different version of that BT encounter, I guess,
Right.
of crawling through them.
Like its heart was in the right place with it.
And
For
it
sure.
stylistically was very, and like there was one toward the end of the game before you fight the giant whale that you're forced to fight, which I thought was a little strange.
Cool traversal
But
puzzle.
the-
I really liked that.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was
but the
fun.
one right before that, or at least I got hit with it, was like 3 or 4 of those dog ones at a time. And
Yeah.
And at first I was like, "Whoa, shit! There's more of them," you know. And then I was like, "All right, I'm just gonna run."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I
think
just
that's what they
I
want
just
you to
I
do.
think they want you
Yeah.
to.
They just like come up and kind of just like
They
look
didn't
around.
attack. That was what I was
Yeah,
gonna
like,
say.
they just,
They
like-
don't attack you
Yeah.
really, and when they do, you just turn around and go grenade, and then they're like, which is like, again, I wasn't mad at it because it was, you know, like if it had been hard, it would have been annoying. But
This is not relevant, but we're talking about gameplay mechanics, and I just feel like I haven't been able to fully get this off my chest. The fist fight with Higgs.
oh my god,
Oh gosh, yeah, that was.
I just need to say
That
that
was
that's a
just one
thing
of
that
the-
happened in that game.
that felt so 2004, dude. I was like,
There was
Call back.
a low
PS4.
point. There was a low point.
I was like,
I
why?
was like, is this really it? Okay.
Well, but I think he was playing it for the lulz, right? Because like
don't
the Street
know.
Fighter like fucking health bars come up, you know? It's just
That
like
was just MGS4.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
please
I
don't
was like,
do this.
This is
I don't know.
This is a throwback.
No, well,
You know what? I felt like I do agree with the combat being a little too simplistic and didn't evolve enough. Like especially like the mule stuff. I was like expecting that. I was like, oh, this is where we're gonna get more creative. Like you have to come with more inventive ways to infiltrate to get stuff. And it just like as you said, you don't need to do any of that. You literally just walk up Assassin's Creed
You
style.
could if you wanted to,
but like what's
but you don't-
the benefit of
You don't
doing
have
that?
to.
And the only thing I could see, the only interpretation I can get of like maybe why they went this super I feel like it was a really safe route to go was because so much of the other game was like new, unique, and so many systems behind how you just deliver packages and all that I think they didn't want you to fail a lot in combat and just add this extra layer of frustration. Like, wow, it sucks having to go across all these like areas and deliver stuff. It takes so long, and then I gotta fight these really hard battles on top of that. That's too much, Kojima. I mean, at this point, I would have liked more of that, but I think they erred on the side of caution where let's not push the player. This is a different type of experience for them. Let's not overwhelm them and frustrate them to the point they quit.
And I think I mentioned this on Frame Trap a little bit, but I think, and maybe this is incorrect, but it seems to me that it might have been a budgetary and time for development thing, or they just set their target and hit it, and that was fine. But like, the game feels kind of, I don't know, modular maybe, where it's like you put a mule encounter here, and like they just use mule encounter, lethal, non-lethal version for the whole game because like they were just doing a game where it's like, we have these puzzle pieces and we're just going to put them in this order because that's the scope of development that we can do. And I think, and this can maybe serve as a Sam Porter bridge into story, but like Chapter 7, I think, is the first one, and there are 3 of them. The combat scenarios with Cliff, which are all basically identical, just in different war settings, which I think were pretty underwhelming.
Dude, a Vietnam game from Kojima, like
would be crazy.
Snake Eater vibes, would be
It'd be crazy.
very incredible. Like
Here's
Apocalypse Now.
The Cliff stuff is probably my biggest complaint with the whole game. Because especially as it is unfolding, like you get sucked up into that tornado, suddenly it's World War One. I'm just like, the way that it's presented in those early moments, it was kind of like, oh shit, I can't
God,
wait. And it looks so amazing. And then you play it. And it's just like, it just shatters right in front of you. And you're like, okay, that was weird, but that's done. And then they keep doing it, and it doesn't get any better. And it's just...
it doesn't change.
It doesn't change.
Like, the environment changes.
And what's frustrating, and we can talk about Cliff as a character, and something that I want to get into with the story... Mads does a great job.
Yeah.
Especially at the end.
Yes.
Presence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the use of the big name actors and how effective I think they are, and some of like my favorite in-game storytelling moments. There's a lot I don't like about the story, but there are moments that worked so incredibly well. Die Hardman is somebody I really want to talk about.
Oh my God, shocking.
And just talking about this game and thinking about it, I feel like things are getting a little bit too binary with Death Stranding, where it's like, oh my God, you think it's amazing and it's genius and it's so subversive, or you absolutely hate it and think anybody that likes it is being disingenuous. And it's like, I don't feel either of those things. Like,
it's hard for people to believe it's an 8.
Yeah, I really liked it, but it's like I could probably spend an hour talking about the things I don't like. I could spend another hour talking about the things I like, and it's just like,
well, welcome to spoiler mode.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And
Settle in.
It almost reminds me in a way of how I ended up feeling about Breath of the Wild over time, and the kind of the journey that I went on with Breath of the Wild, where I was playing it and it was like
perfect in every way. Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah, so when I was playing it, I felt that way, like it was just kind of magical and enchanting. But then, you think about it and you push back on it a little bit more, and you're like, yeah, those dungeons were pretty bad, and the story was kind of weird. And so you come up with all these things, and then more time passes, and you're like, all of that is true, but I took something away from it. And I think that's kind of the frustrating thing about Death Stranding, is there is so much valid criticism to throw right into the face of this game, but I can't. I'm so glad that I played it. I'm so glad that it exists.
And I respect this game deeply for being something weird and different.
Right.
And like when you aim for something weird and different, there are going to be successes and failures.
When one of your main themes is bonds, you
I
have my
thought
respect.
Of you so many times, I can never say it specifically until right now, but I thought of you like because in the last like 4 chapters of the game, the characters all just say bonds outright like 8 times, and I'm like, Huber.
Yes.
You know how
That's so awesome.
You know how I mentioned the Higgs fist fight and how I just like needed to say that that's a thing that exists in the game? We need to fucking talk about the Mario and Princess Peach line.
Oh my god!
I was losing my mind
When
listening
she
to it. I
said
was like,
Princess
is
Beach,
this a joke?
I was like,
well, I mean
What
it
are you
is,
doing?
but yeah,
But like, kind of not.
yeah, it's so bizarre. But also like that's kind of part of the Kojima thing that's still around. That's just his just weird sense of humor. The guy Nicholas Winding Refn played
Hartman.
Hartman like literally just turning to the camera
Giving you the
and
thumbs
going
up.
So
But
funny.
the thing is,
and when he
Taking
takes
your
20
likes,
away and then
yeah.
gives you 20 back, it's
the
just
way
like
that quirk and bit fit in, it felt natural
Yeah.
and kind of like flippant. When they do the Mario and Princess Peach line, it's like the whole game comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
Because it feels so
Removed,
out
yeah.
of place
Yeah.
for.
well, do remember though that early in the game,
It didn't really bug me that much because it seemed like something that would be in their world. Like Mario is a thing that existed in their world, and there's a good chance Sam knows what Mario Brothers is. Like, yeah, it's like weird to us because it's a fucking video game thing, and it's like kind of jarring. But I feel like if they made a movie reference or something like that, people wouldn't be as crazy about it.
Yeah, I feel like there are movie references.
I mean, there are.
But the thing is that the way I get what you're saying, but I think the way that they contextualize it is what matters. So when you see like the wall of Blu-rays in Hartman's wall, it's contextualized in the sense that it's like, hey, this is who I am. I need entertainment. This is my whole life.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you about these movies because they fit within this very rigid time frame. It all like makes sense.
Yeah.
This is just like. And the thing is, it's not like you're just having like a chill conversation with Amelie, and you're like, "Oh, we're gonna get nostalgic here. We're gonna talk about something that's my life." It is a critical story moment.
it's
where
like
it gets thrown
the
out.
most emotional
Yes,
part.
like, so that's
of
why
that
it's so
storyline.
ridiculous.
I think it doesn't bug me as much because I don't feel like you need a huge build-up for like every single line thrown out there like that. Like to me, it was just something like fun and dumb and something they said. It wasn't like a huge thing where I was like, "What the fuck? Why are they saying this?" kind of moment.
But it wasn't said. It's just a dumb lie. We don't have to get too hung
No,
up on
of
it.
course.
But
Yeah.
that's something that I bring up in the review is the presentation of how things happen. Where I wish, Brad, like what you're describing, the kind of naturalness or like ease of world building came a little bit better, because I feel like there is kind of too much gravitas with everything all the time.
Yeah.
Every
Good
character not every character, but most of the characters that you're talking with, everything is just so melodramatic all the time, and that's good because the situation that they're in, right? Like you think about Mad Max Fury Road, I think is a good parallel here, where they're in a shit world, right?
Yeah,
and
not
so,
a happy situation.
yeah, things are really serious, but those characters like aren't always like talking like they're in some sort of like
Right.
Shakespearean play. There's a naturalness to them, and there's downtime to kind of get to know them. And you don't really get that as effectively in Death Stranding, and that's why some of my favorite moments are the emails, where you're just like, oh, hey, man, I'm following in your footsteps, or this is what's going on in the world, or here's what the day-to-day life is like. And all that stuff is great. I just wish it was presented in the game in a more effective way. There needs
To
to be
me-
more...
Did you see the Keeley emails?
Oh yeah.
I did not see the Keeley email.
When
Where
he's
he was,
like,
collecting stuff?
Collecting things.
Yeah.
and he explains
Yeah.
that Kojima invented a kind of game that
Yeah.
changed humans from sapiens to ludens.
Yeah.
And the Conan O'Brien stuff was very, very
That's
funny.
what I've been wanting to ask you forever. Did you find the musician?
No?
First
Okay.
area.
Yes. You get a harmonica, Ian.
Up the
Oh,
waterfall.
what?
Yeah, I
Up the
knew you'd be
waterfall.
so mad if you missed this.
Where?
Yeah.
So you know, past the first distribution, the big
That's what I
distribution,
was
Yeah,
trying to
the
say.
going
for
along
so
the
long.
river, there's a waterfall. There's a path along
Yeah.
it, and there's a little like base.
I guess
right
I'll
there.
And you have
play
to go
Death
down.
Stranding again.
Yeah.
in
You have to
my
go
life.
down into the ocean, like right there, the big lake, because his musician stuff like drops there. You have to grab it, bring it back up.
Okay, yeah,
You
because
should
you
be
need
able
to bring
use
him
zip
something.
lines now to get
Okay,
there.
yeah.
since
Sure.
you-
Oh man, I gotta pop back in.
But back to what you were saying, Ben. I look at the story in two ways. There's like the really heady philosophical stuff that like just kind of flies right by me that I'm like trying to
Ha and
comprehend.
ha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's
body
the
and soul.
beginning stuff, which is my favorite stuff, the really grounded world building stuff like corpse disposal, which is like my favorite thing in the game. Love the corpse disposal stuff.
It's hard because you can't bring anything else.
Yeah. Like carrying the bodies, I love that stuff. But like the beginning in the cave when the BT paws are going by you, and then that kind of leads you to the first area into kind of corpse disposal, like all of that slow, grounded world building stuff in the beginning, I loved so much. But then everything gets really philosophical and really melodramatic and really.
Well, I think that this ties in kind of what you were saying, Ben, is like the method of delivering these characters and the story kind of coincides directly to which storylines I think were successful and which ones I think were flawed. Right. And like the Amelie, Bridget, kind of Dead Man stuff, the Hartman stuff, all that stuff didn't land quite as hard for me in comparison to, say, Fragile or kind of Cliff and Die Hardman in another way. But like the main storyline, I think kind of failed a little bit. Not failed, but like didn't hit as hard as like the Fragile.
I was way more invested
stuff.
in each character.
Right. Like I cared way more about the baby and Sam and Fragile because they're the ones I've gone along with. Whereas the other story people like Amelie and stuff, they just felt like little nodes.
Yeah, they weren't out like in the world with you.
And like, but you only got them in chunks, and they told you about the stuff. Yeah. And like, so the whole ending part where they give you the credits for the first of 7 times when you're sitting on that beach with Amelie and stuff didn't really resonate super hard for me because Amelie, I'm just like, I don't know you. I don't care about you.
Especially to trigger more of that, Ian, you just kind of have to like run around the beach to like trigger. Really cumbersome
moment.
Presentation of that.
Also, like giving you the gun and like it felt like, oh, a choice. Like this is interesting, and like trying to shoot her and then trying to shoot yourself. And it was just kind of weird because there are a few moments in the game where the narrative and the gameplay don't cohere in the right way, where it's like everything else you feel like you have this agency, but then there are moments where it's like, because you know when Dead Man says at the end when it's like, you know, if you burn your cuffs, you'll be off the network and they won't know what you do. So I was like trying to like go somewhere else with BB and be like, okay, how do I let BB out? Is this a choice?
Yeah.
I'm like, all I want to do is let BB out of this thing. And I was like terrified, but eventually I was like, okay, the game is just telling me I have to put BB in this incinerator, and then Sam makes that choice. So I'm like, good, I get the ending I wanted, but it's weird that I didn't have a way to do it.
You feel like you should have had one.
Right. I feel like I should have gotten to choose.
I feel like...
which Sam wouldn't choose to burn the baby ever, but...
Death Stranding has some of my favorite Kojima storytelling aspects and some of my least favorite Kojima storytelling aspects. And I want to talk about Metal Gear Solid 4 and 5.
Sure.
Because those two games specifically sort of suffer this burden where they're like, we have made this mess and it's going to take so much time to untangle it that's what we devote a lot of screen time to is like having this all make sense, putting all the people in place. And I think part of what we're criticizing with the story is Death Stranding kind of does the same thing where it kind of builds up all of this stuff and it has to unravel it. And so that's why I don't think maybe you feel as connected to Amelie as you would like.
Right.
And then there are other characters where you don't feel as connected to them as you would like. And that's why I think Fragile is probably the strongest character in the game for me, is because she does have a very personal and dramatic story, but it's also very focused. It's like, this thing happened to her, this is what she wants, and this is how her attitude is changing to it over time. Yeah. And she also feels like she's kind of with you throughout the whole thing. Yeah, and I think that really matters a lot. Whereas like Hartman is like stuck in the back of the game
until the end.
And then you go and you do it, and it's a cool sequence. It's a cool little thing that happens, and then he's just kind of she's shot out of my mind again. Like I wasn't thinking about him too hard. And there are other characters that kind of like came and went like that for me.
Well, and Fragile's the only other character besides Higgs, kind of, but whatever Higgs, but like who's like actually out in the world doing stuff. Everyone else is just little hub people.
Did you go to Higgs's hideout and read his stuff?
I haven't read his journals, but I went to his like freaky little bunker.
So again, kind of talking about the emails, there's stuff in the journals with Higgs that I'm like, I wish I could have gotten this. Like, I have a much better understanding of what your motivation is, and I wish I just wasn't reading about it as text on screen.
And after it's all done, like
Yeah.
you can't. I don't think you could get that before you kill him or she or lets him go or whatever.
And I also want to talk about codec conversations because I love codec conversations in Metal Gear games, as many people do. They're not all great, and there's definitely criticisms to throw at Metal Gear codec conversations. But like specifically Metal Gear Solid 1, there would be times where it felt like something like crazy would happen, and you just get on the codec, and it felt like Snake was processing it, or he was just having like some sort of emotional support, and it was a very like humanizing thing. And they have codec calls in this game, and it's pretty much just like giving you an objective.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm trying to
Three
say
times. They always give you the same objective 3 times.
is I needed just a little bit more of those humanizing moments.
Yeah.
For Sam, and I don't know exactly how those would be presented, but
They do. It's interesting because I feel like Norman Reedus does a great job in this, and
Yeah.
like his performance and voice
Yeah.
were really good.
I
And
agree.
like the end stuff, it's weird because I was talking to Damiani when I was 30 hours into this game, and I was like, "How close to the end am I? Like, don't tell me how far, like in literal terms, but just like
A hint.
ballpark." And he was like, "Well, I think you're about where the story picks up," which turned out to be true. Like I was right before like the last third of the game, which is basically when like I'd say 60% of the story takes place. And I think that a lot of those little scenes with Norman Reedus, he does a really great job, especially with relation to the baby. And like you hear a little smattering of his backstory with the wife and stuff.
I actually really liked the way him naming Lou was handled.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think the ending is. It worked for me in a lot of ways, and I think it was because of Norman Reedus, but also that Die Hardman speech is like arresting. Like it.
Best character performance I think I've seen in a game.
Holy shit!
Big moment.
And it all comes together in a way that feels purposeful. Where like Die Hardman is such a cold character throughout that whole game, and he's like frustratingly cold, and like you want to get in and you want to know him. But that distance, it feels like, has a huge payoff when he finally breaks down and finally has that moment where he takes off the mask. And I feel like that speech alone makes so many of the decisions and like just design choices in that game stronger. It makes the theme stronger. Like a lot comes out through that speech.
In your talking just now, I had a realization sort of about my complaint a second ago with the story, because Norman Reedus, he cut all ties with Bridget and Amelie and all those people before the game began. And at the end, right when Die Hardman kind of breaks down and has that thing, Norman Reedus is in the process of leaving again to like stay disconnected, right? And so it is sort of a weird thing that the storylines we all relate to the most are the baby and Fragile. And those seem to be the storylines that Norman Reedus' character Sam relates to the most as well. So it's kind of interesting where it's like, I wonder if that's intentional, but like in a game where so much of the form is the function, it's interesting that the stories that resonate with us seemed to also resonate with Sam the most too, because
I liked Hartman looking for his family.
Yeah,
I was super.
that was
into
cool.
I
side story.
liked that whole. I
Yeah.
really liked that side story. Actually,
Yeah,
quite a
just
bit.
neat.
Yeah.
He would
Like,
kill
and it-
himself every 20
And it's
minutes.
so
or whatever.
Kojima,
Yeah, I
like
was
it's
like,
so
oh, this is
ridiculous.
Kojima.
It was a really great
Yeah.
balance of like this is so ridiculous, but also like believable in this world, and like really I'm emotionally invested in like, dude, I'm
Well,
looking
that's,
for your
that's
family.
something
like,
I want to
awesome.
talk about too, because like everyone loved to be confused by the trailers at first, and I'm like, they're trailers. They're not supposed to explain things. They'd be bad trailers if they explained things.
so frustrating.
But like, and also, yeah, the trailers spoil so much shit. But like, as a fantasy world and stuff, I thought this game actually came together and everything was explained way more than I thought it would be. And like, yeah, Hartman and stuff, like they're cool, weird fantasy characters, but they completely fit within the reality of this reality, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just happy this game had a proper ending.
Right.
After
Yeah.
MGS5,
Yeah.
where it's just like,
Yeah.
why does this
Yeah.
game even exist kind of thing.
Totally.
I was actually, surprised by that. Maybe mostly because of MGS5. but-
MGS5, I felt like the sensation was like there's got to be more out
There's gotta
there.
be more.
Gotta be more, yeah.
Like,
and that-
is there a way to unlock more? Like,
Yeah.
calling everyone, like,
Yeah.
play on hard to get S
Yeah.
on everything.
Damiani, like, what if you do an S
We gotta
rank?
remove all the nukes.
I prefer more
Gotta do
satisfied.
it.
I want to talk about the Harmon thing because something that really got me excited about Death Stranding and a big reason why I wanted to review it and a big reason I was like, oh, this is clicking for me. I see something here that I really like. Is they had those character introduction trailers.
Right.
They had one for Hartman. I don't know how many people saw it, but I
think I
saw
saw
it.
that one.
And he has that whole conversation where you kind of go into his room and he talks about his situation.
Really? They spoiled that?
Yes!
What the hell?
Dude,
And I was like,
don't watch Kojima
yes!
trailers at
Oh.
a point.
What's
Like,
the
you
deal,
get,
dude?
You get maybe one
just
or two
forgot
with
it.
him. Then don't watch anymore if you don't want to be
Watch
spoiled.
the first one, yeah, because it's
And-
just high concept.
removed from that, it is such a cool moment, and it does everything that you're talking about, Ian. Where by interacting with this character, and it, like you said, it's this ridiculous situation, but it's fascinating, and it like the way that they present it feels believable, and it's just nice seeing these two characters interact and having this one character explain this like pretty creative situation that they're in. And I was like, this is amazing. I wish I hadn't seen like pretty much the
Right.
entire thing beforehand. And I wish there were a few more moments like this.
yeah.
It's an interesting balance they have to do with that because I think all of us pretty much were lucky enough to have. Do we all find Conan before?
Oh, yeah.
Before it's spoiled.
That-
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
before
yeah.
Conan Dan
Yeah.
spoiled
I
it,
get
yeah.
that they want to drum up excitement for the
Conan,
game, but
the
like
Clueless Gamer spoils the shit out of
I
everything.
was so glad
They spoiled God of
you
War in the
nudged me,
worst
like,
way.
You were like, basically like, Dominic, go find the cosplay person. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. I
Yeah.
was like, is it gonna make fun of cosplayers or something?
Right.
And then like I'm looking at this and I'm
Yeah.
like, and then the reveal I was like, oh shit,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is so cool.
I thought it was going to be
And
some
I
like Otacon. geek.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
was like, and then I saw when they revealed it on the Conan, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, oh
And
no,
he's just Conan,
you're
dude.
depriving. I was like, oh,
Straight up
that's
just
Just doing
Conan.
stand up
Dude.
at you.
but like,
The Conan thing is so ridiculous.
it's so.
Otter hat, dude.
I wore the otter hat.
Yeah, I wore it.
I wore it the rest
Oh,
of the
yeah.
game.
When I got to the
I think I wore
snow,
it, like the whole game.
Yeah, I wore it the whole game. I was
Yeah.
a little bummed that I didn't literally become an otter when I got swept away, but whatever.
Well, because the way they kept saying it,
They
I was
said,
like,
they
I
literally
think
said,
I'm gonna be.
they said in
Yeah.
the description and out loud, you will literally become an otter. And I was like, okay.
Gotta-
I was expecting something
get
so
5
good from
stars.
that. The other
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
like some of the side stuff, like I thought I was gonna push really far and get some really cool payoffs.
harmonica.
The harmonica was a good one.
That has a
we were
payoff?
talking-
it's just cool. You get it as
Yeah,
well.
just have this thing.
Anytime you rest, you can bust it out and like play.
Yeah.
That's so dope.
It's just
Okay.
a fun little quirky thing. I mean, we're talking about the
didn't even know
Mario
about
Peach
that.
dialogue, but like, there's a video game collector who sends you to go get like retro consoles, and one tactile espionage action, and the other one's like silent. Basically, it's go get Metal Gear, go get Silent Hill. I'm like, wait, what? I was like, am I gonna get some cool Easter egg? And it's like, it's really as far as I saw it went, but like, I liked those things more, and like, I kind of liked some of the side characters a little bit better because of like what they were sending me out to do, but at the end of the day, like it played back into everything became the same kind of like gameplay
Yeah,
loop.
yeah.
There was you're just either trying to get upgrades to make your life easier, and that was like really it. And honestly, the one thing I wanted to say, well, you're talking about it like earlier when you said like 60% of the way you got like to the like chapter 7, you got to the story,
Yeah.
finally picked up. It feels like there's this weird part of the game, like was it chapter 2 or 3, where like they just dump you in the second area forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like
Yes.
just
So
there's
long.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
yeah,
I mean, it's a
yeah.
huge area, and I kind of get
Which
why.
was kind of my favorite.
Me too,
part.
me
They
me
want
too.
you to just like live in this world for a while and like forget about everything
Building
else.
roads.
And then like
yeah.
it comes all back, it comes rushing back, and then like at times I felt the two were fighting each other, and they didn't do the best way of like weaving them together. And it felt like I think it was because it was a first time like this game was their first time trying to do something like this. This feels like something they could build upon if they wanted to do like I mean, there's nothing that
Stranding
really like teases a Death Stranding 2, but like I'd love to see.
I kind of don't want a Death Stranding.
I
2.
know, but like it doesn't have to be the same world, but a type
Yeah.
of game. I wish they could take the lessons,
DLC
all the criticisms.
as fragile or something.
Yeah,
would
all
be
the
cool.
criticisms we're giving, I wish they could take those and make a follow up to this, because I feel like this was like this building block to something even more meaningful. And they threw out a lot of ideas. Some of them worked, some of them don't. I'm really glad this game exists, and I was really glad to play it. I hope a lot of people play this. Doesn't matter if you don't like it or do like it. It's just something should be experienced.
Yeah.
But like it is, yeah, it has a lot of flaws, and I saw like Kojima saying I want to like make movies and stuff. Like no, like try this again. But I will say, I don't know if you felt this way. Maybe you, Huber, maybe you, Ben. After playing Metal Gear Solid 5 and then this, like I hate to do this, but like I was one of the people who's like I don't want this to be Metal Gear, but after this, and I know I just said I want to see something built upon this. I want to see a more Metal Gear type game from him.
Dude, the Vietnam section
the Vietnam
was
part. I was like,
mind-blowing.
I was just doing all stealth. I was like, I missed this so much. I was like, I just want this again, just a little bit.
I thought of Snake Eater so heavily at the Vietnam section, and then I imagined the game after Death Stranding if it were to be that. I was imagining the possibilities.
I don't want him to go
Whoa.
backwards. I want him to go in
really
some
don't.
weird other new direction.
Yeah.
Like I want he and Guillermo to give up on making Mountains of Madness the movie and just make it a game. Like PT, you know, like
Gosh,
I think
now
you
it-
were trying to say this, Ian, where like you really enjoyed learning about this very distinct world that was created. And despite, whatever problems that I have with the storytelling, I did too. Like it was fascinating just kind of slowly peeling back the layers of this world and trying to piece it together. It was fun, it was exciting. Like going back to Metal Gear, it's like I don't need to learn that like
Not Metal Gear.
like Revolver was actually possessed by Big Bird or
I
something.
mean,
Oh,
it's a war game.
like
I don't. Yeah,
Not
you
Metal
didn't mean
Gear.
literally Metal
Yeah,
Gear.
not
yeah, like
literally.
doesn't even need to be
No,
like
no.
this because you can't right
Yeah,
now,
you can't.
obviously.
No,
but like
no.
I want like it seems like a lot of the complaints against the
tactical
combat are
espionage
like it
action
didn't do
game, man.
combat very well in this game.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like
This
that's
is
another
a Stranding game, Damiani. It doesn't need
I
combat.
get, but he's done it so well in the past.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel
Yeah, I
like
mean,
he
Metal
can
Gear Solid
take
5
take like
plays
those
amazing.
two
Oh, it's
less like
amazing,
a
yeah.
fusion of the best parts of 5 and Death Stranding into something even new. Because I don't want to follow up to Death Stranding's story.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
want something new. I feel like there's so much talent and potential behind Kojima's ideas. I think this. I'm glad he gets to make the kind of game he wants to, and there's so much of this game that's so distinctly Kojima. But like, I think it's been a while since he's made a game, and like I'd like to see him do like a follow up. And like I can't wait to see those talk shows. Like I learned like from the mistakes of this or like the shortcomings from this, because the especially the online community building stuff. I
Yeah.
think that is
good.
such a key component to whatever he does next. That has to be there. And I want to see like what not just Kojima, other people can do with that type of like multiplayer interaction, because
Yeah.
it was. I just loved it. It was
Yeah, and
so
he's
good.
He's so big on war. Like I can't imagine how like meaningful and impactful the possibilities that could be. Like taking the social aspects and making a game and commenting on war. Like in the
but
heart
I
of
think,
darkness.
I think this game is a direct commentary
sure.
on that, and
For sure.
and on Metal Gear Solid, because it's like he spent so long making games about people fighting that he wanted to make a
Yep.
game about people coming together,
Yep.
and I think I honor that. Like I think it's
Heck
really
yeah.
cool. Also, like if there were a DLC for this, you know what I would want it to be? I'd want it to be like 6 years after the game. You play as Fragile because she's the only one like still doing gameplay type stuff, but it's not even main storyline. But you can just find Sam Porter Bridges living in like a cabin with Louise, just being a dad. And he's just out there like minding his own damn business, and it's not even like main storyline. You can just find him optionally. I think that would be
actually-
precious.
It's hard because sometimes I think are better left in the background, but I do think that the Fragile Higgs
Higgs story. There's
could
more
be,
to tell
could
there.
be
They
really
could.
Sure,
interesting.
sure,
to them
yeah.
Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
really like that
I
scene.
would like just a little more of Die Harmon and Mads. Just like I
Sure.
would just like a mission
Yeah,
segment with
sure,
them as
sure.
a team.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, Mads,
Yeah.
Mads is so great in the end, and it's not that his like little things as you're going up the elevator
Oh, the
are
BB
not,
talks?
yeah, are not well performed, I guess. But he's so good at the end that I kind of get what you're saying.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Completely.
It's
where
just
I
like
want a little bit
he
more
didn't
Mads.
like get to shine until like near the end of the game.
Right.
Like I remember playing
Kind of nobody
and I was like, yeah, man, there's just been a lot of Mads talking to me
Yeah.
as BB.
Yeah.
I'm like, when is Mads gonna like do
they started
something?
repeating for me. where
Yeah,
I was
they
like,
started
oh,
repeating.
okay.
Yeah,
I'm
they
gonna-
do.
you can go to the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take you to the moon.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
baby, BB.
I
I
want
saw
to
that one like twice. Yeah.
I want to bounce off Damiani and talk about what he was saying, being so in love with the social aspects, because I am also completely in love with those social aspects.
Yeah.
And there's something I think just on the broadest level that Kojima Production did here that I'm like, we need more of this.
Yeah.
Where it felt like he wanted to tell a game about bringing people together, and so he formed the game around that idea.
Yes.
Whereas I feel like a lot of games are like, okay, we have this idea. How do we fit it into a template that already exists?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
talk about this thing. How do I make it a
He did the
open world
form
RPG
first.
I
Yeah.
want to talk about war. How do I make it into a level-based first-person shooter? And so sometimes it feels like the message gets diluted because it's being repackaged in something that you already know. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths of this game is the storytelling and what you're doing are so in sync because it was designed around that, and it was like we're going to be a game about delivery. Like that was. Yeah, go ahead.
The online stuff was the best part for sure, and I felt connected to people. I felt the bonds, but for the story, it felt somehow really small, and I don't know if that's by design or not. It felt personal and intimate and small scale, and I think by the end, I didn't feel like I just brought this country back from the brink or connected this entire country. I didn't feel like this big. We did it. It just felt like there were 10 people living in the country.
I think the answer to that is like Di Harmon becoming the president kind of thing, and like doing the speech. I guess it's like the moment of we connected everything. We are America again.
Well, and I think back to what I was saying before about how like Sam Porter Bridges doesn't feel impacted by this, and I think that's kind of one of the interesting subversions at the end of the story is like the whole game is about connecting America, bringing all this stuff together, and like people keep saying that ad nauseum to you in the cheesiest of ways, and Sam Porter Bridges is like, I don't care about America, I don't care about this, but hang on, but like the connection that he makes is with Louise, is with that baby, and like to him that's what he cares about, and like that's the connection, and like allowing himself to move back forward with a baby and with a child after losing his, you know, because he doesn't give a shit about America. That's kind of the funny thing is like he has these heroics thrust upon him. And that's kind of why he is the good hero for this, because he doesn't care. He doesn't buy the party line. He just does it because kind of there's nothing better to do, and like, or you know, whatever. But then like through this process, he grows in the way that's meaningful for him, which is with Louise, the BB, which I thought was a really cool, because like I wouldn't have bought it if at the end he was like, "Go America."
Yeah,
like when he left the speech, I was like, "All right, okay."
I think. I mean, that's reminiscent of Metal Gear Solid 3.
Sure.
Ian, I think you are so on point. Everything that you said, I totally agree with. And just to add on to that, and something that doesn't come up until the very end is the concept of masks.
Yeah.
And Huber, when I started the game and you had that whole like briefing on what it was going to do, I was kind of expecting that as well to either like have it feel like a little bit like, because you're kind of doing stuff and you're like, does this even matter? Like it does kind of give you that feeling, or to have like people resist it a little bit more and be like, actually no, being connected is really bad.
Yeah.
But I expected either some sort of, I guess I just expected more of an impact, and I actually think, based on what Ian said, is Norman Reedus' character recognizes that the chiral network and all of this, it's just like kind of a way to comfort people. Like, yes, it's obviously practically useful, and they talk about the benefits in the game, but it's more about a symbol and what that represents. And obviously, like Sam knows enough to see through that, and that's why he gets something deeper and more meaningful out of Lou. And it's just kind of this interesting dilemma of like, how hollow are the things that we revere, and is that still somehow a good thing? And I think those are interesting questions.
It's sort of like the end of Dark Knight when like Sam Porter Bridges is like willing to partake in the assembly of this symbolic network. I mean, it's an actual network, but and like actually grows in a way meaningful to himself too, which is kind of cool. It is funny though how the game. You were talking about the Mario line earlier. The line that was funny to me was when they introduced boss fights to the game. Even though Damiani and I had both already killed a BT kind of just incidentally before having to do it at the end of Chapter 2. But like when Higgs shows up and is like, you got tired of the grind. Here's the part you've been waiting for, right?
This is what
You know?
I've been waiting for, yeah.
And I'm just like, you're just like, because it was funny because I had just been talking with Ben about how I was like, oh, this part is a little grindy, but I'm not hating it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like so funny because it's like the game gets so weird and meta sometimes.
I had more
God, this game over
Kojima
talk, yeah.
Kojima expectations when little white masked people were like
Yeah.
throwing rockets. I was like, oh, it'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
when I beat it or something, I'll be able to like help other players out and like throw items to them. And like,
Yeah.
no.
I wonder if there actually is a gameplay thing, or if it just like picks a player name and just has them come up
Yeah.
and throw stuff to you.
It
'Cause
felt
it's-
very random.
It felt
Yeah.
very random, and like it kind of, and I don't know how in the game that they've set up. I don't know how you could have done it other than how they did it, really. But like, because there were times where I did not expect to get into a BT kerfuffle and had no hermetic grenades or whatever, and I was like, oh crap, and then I was just like, well, I'll just dance around for a while until somebody pops out of the ooze and throws me some weaponry, you know, which obviously like completely takes away the fear of a combat encounter. But not that they're overly challenging anyway, but like it was sort of a funny choice. But yeah, there's some weird gamey stuff. And like I was thinking about Quiet versus Fragile. And it's like I feel like Kojima has grown in a lot of ways vis-a-vis female characters in his games. He's still kind of Kojima, but Fragile storyline on the whole I really liked. So I don't think anything in this game is overtly exploitative or anything like that, but I don't know.
I really liked her.
Something that we haven't gotten to talk about, and I haven't seen too much discussion about, is the relationship between the Junker and that woman that you bring over to him.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a cool moment because it's like, oh, they're actually going out of
It is
the-
weird that you only ever carry women around.
the shelter. And something that I actually was like, wow, I kind of respect this decision is like you leave them and it's all big and dramatic and it's like, oh, you know, it's like a bit of happiness.
It's like the
in this
first time a
deathless
character
world.
comes out of one of those things too. That you
Yeah.
like see someone in the real world.
Confirm
Yeah.
there's real people.
Yeah,
alive.
yeah.
It's a pretty huge moment and it's good like confirming that there are actually people there.
Yeah.
But later on, you get an email that is like it didn't work
Yeah,
out.
it's like falling apart, and he's like, dude.
Yeah.
And
And,
then you get
you're
one
right.
from her.
There's a little bit of a build-up, and it's like, oh man, this isn't what I thought it was gonna be, and then it just happens where they're just like they're kind of matter of fact about it, and they're like, oh, it won't work out, and then eventually they're like, oh, we're gonna try again.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting there and reading that email and being like, that's so cool that you were willing to do this. That adds some believability to it, where like, no matter how ridiculous this world is, no matter how many times I see a baby give a thumbs up, like you have this moment where people are dealing with something that feels so mundane and commonplace, and I loved that part of the game.
Well, and like later when you get the message from the chiral artist's mother about how they met, and like he was a part of a gang of marauders that like killed a bunch of people, and then like she took them both in, you know, and never told them their past and all that stuff. And then the chiral artist, the young woman, was like, I know it's dangerous, but I'm gonna just chance going over there and giving this another shot. Yeah, it was a whole weird interesting thing. It is kind of weird though, because Damiani, when you were talking before, and I keep trying to come up with games to compare this game to, and there aren't really, which is I think a testament to this game, but like the gameplay still feels a bit like No Man's Sky meets like Astroneer meets Minecraft, and with a little bit of Metal Gear in there, and then the story is just like full Metal Gear, like in the way it's told, which is a bizarre combination of games. But like, I don't know, it doesn't quite feel like two separate things, the story and the gameplay, but almost.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing about this game for me, like the reason I kept wanting to play it, I mean, obviously I wanted to know like the story. I wanted to say like it's Kojima. You want to like follow through with it. But and I understood, like I kind of got a feeling like the gameplay loop, I was like, this isn't probably when I started to, like when I talked earlier about like the mule stuff, it never got as innovative as I thought it was gonna get. Like, okay, it's the online stuff is about as innovative as this is gonna really get here. I really think the game did a very convincing job of the whole, starting you out as like you are, as we were talking about, Sam is like this isolationist person, does not want to be connected to humanity, let alone just America, their United Cities, geez, yeah, United Cities of America. Like he just wants to be on his own, but like he's still delivering things for people. It's like there's still something with him. I'm like, okay, like I feel that like he is just wants to be on his own, and there's other people you come across that kind of feel that way too. But as you progress and like you see the benefits, I'm not trying to sell like the message of like the in-game story, but like. You get new inventions, you get these new devices, you start connecting things.
The doctor.
Like you go from this,
Yeah.
you get this feeling of being overwhelmed in this like giant world to like, I can do anything in this world. And like, it did, like for an open world game, it needs to nail that. And I think on that very level, it did that for me. And that's why I kept wanting to push on with the gameplay. And like, the game looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like the different environments. Like once I get to the snow areas, it's like I just want to walk around here forever. Like I'm just gonna spend the fact that like it was still like the times like stuff was
Yeah.
going on with snow. I was like, oh, this is
And
gonna be a
it's worse?
nice.
Yeah.
Like it's
Is
been
it,
a
like,
nice safe
sits on
place.
it?
It's
Yeah.
snow now. I'm like, but wait, it's precipitation, right? Oh shit, they explain it. It's still gonna happen. I was
And
like,
it's worse.
And then like the BTs in that area, because like if you're not wearing all terrain stuff, like. This sense of like you could be in these hopeless situations and then you feel so good when you get out of them or you finally make that delivery.
Or you set up zip lines knowing you're gonna have to come back. And
I
once
ju- yeah,
you
like,
connect
it-
it, you're like,
but
oh,
it's
this
like-
is
Or
great.
do you know if
do
you're
that.
gonna?
yeah, it's awesome.
It's like that sense. I think it really nailed it on that part of it, and that's what kept me mostly playing on top of like the story. And like if they didn't do that well, I would have like quit like halfway through the game, regardless of the story. I would have been like, this, no, you failed.
I totally think that the two biggest successes for this game, for me, are like the social networking aspects, like the form being the function, like you were saying, and just like straight vibes. This world just like, especially around like the beginning of chapter 2 when you kind of opens up and you're there, I was just like, man, it just feels cool to be in this, like to just stand here and look at this, like America looks like Scotland for some reason. It's
the
like
tech was super sick in
Yeah,
the game too.
yeah.
Good
And-
faces.
And the music
Yeah.
kicks in at those parts. Like they
music-
just know when to kick in. I was
Yeah.
like, yes.
Oh, the
yes.
music. The music
Yes.
is
Low
one of the
roar,
best
yeah.
parts of the game.
I was like,
that first song, like "Why So Serious" or "Don't
Yeah.
Be So Serious" or whatever in the intro credits, I was like, man, this is
but I feel
cool.
like every single aspect of the game, it just did it a few too many times.
sure.
Like the ninth
yeah.
time it
music.
plays Low Roar when I'm
Yeah.
coming over a hill is
Yeah.
like 9
Well, the
times
game-
less impactful.
It's like early on in the play experience, and I feel a little less like this now, but somewhere in the like 20-30 hour range, I started thinking about this concept that I was calling the poison of oh damn it, like I forgot the other word. It starts with a P. But like when you're so popular, like Quentin Tarantino, right? Like you need someone else to rein you in a little bit, to edit your stuff down a little bit. And like this one felt a little bit like that, where it's like the poison of pedigree. That's what I was thinking. Is like Kojima gets to do this because he's Kojima, and no one's gonna be like, what if you you know, which I think is good on the whole. Like I'm glad that this happened. I'm very happy this game exists. But yeah, I think that this game could have been 15% slimmer, maybe, just on
Well-
like time or something.
What Huber was saying, like doing the same thing one too many times, I think that is 100% a valid complaint. And I think you run into that thought process of like, well, if you're running out of ideas, why don't we scale the game back?
Right.
But then I think in my head, like, is it by design? Is it a commentary on something? Like, the fact that I stopped picking up people's
Yeah.
deliveries, is Kojima telling me something? Like,
Maybe.
you know? Because in
Yeah.
the beginning, I was so gung-ho, let's go, let's build these roads, let's pick everything up, I'm getting your thing. Yeah, oh, you drop that, I got you.
Right.
And I start, you know, and
I
then...
went through the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
halfway through, it's like, I'm good.
I think on
Like-
some level, yeah, because I think you're right, and it's something that I go into the review, and I think they're trying to intentionally make things a little boring, a little frustrating, like a little repetitious. But I was getting all of that in like chapter 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I think he still they did a good job of instilling those feelings. I don't know it being as long as it did necessarily benefited that or like I'm sure on some level, yeah, it made it better, but I don't know.
Where
It's hard
I
to-
felt that complaint most palpably wasn't in gameplay moments with like music coming in. It was in like story minus, like where it's not actual story, but it's like pseudo story, but really we're giving you an objective over the codec. Where it's like there were like maybe 5 or 6 moments where Die Hardman gave me a task over the thing, and then it swapped over to Deadman, and he reiterated exactly the same task. And then it swapped over to Hartman, and he reiterated the same thing. And then once or twice, even Mama then came in and said the same thing in a different way.
Yep,
I was just
totally
like,
agree.
yo, I got it the first time, guys. I have to take a package from point A to point B because that's literally all you do. Like, you don't have to explain it 5 times. For God's sakes.
Yep.
There were a few times. I feel like multiple times I would say to Abby, I was like, I can't believe how good this game looks, and you guys kind of already commented on that. But there was a lot of talk. We had a whole Hotake frame trap on it where it was like, are these celebrities like going to be impactful in the game in a meaningful way? And that is something that I want to say to the point. A point of praise for the game is I felt like the physical presence of the characters was just as important as the words that they were saying.
Sure.
And that still doesn't get to happen enough in video games. It is changing, it is getting better, but there were, again, going back to that Die Hardman scene where it was like, yes, obviously the way that he was delivering those lines were important, but seeing the anguish on his face was incredible, and I really got
and
a
the
lot
blocking
out of that.
the blocking of having him look down
Yeah.
during the most intense parts of emotion and hide his face, probably a smart decision from a tech standpoint too, because then you get the feeling without going like, ooh, faces look weird in video games when they cry. Like, yeah, that scene was so impeccably done. Yeah.
It was just. Go ahead.
Sorry,
No, go ahead.
you were talking about the poison of pedigree. And I think that's really interesting. That there's been a lot of conversation about Kojima and Kojima getting a pass and Kojima being overly indulgent and all this stuff. And I think there's truth in there, but sometimes I think we get like too hung up on a specific narrative, because I think you can flip that on its head in an interesting way where it's like, okay, if we accept that Kojima has all this power and all this influence, he can do whatever he wants, like, at least he's doing this.
Right.
At least he's not like, here's my loot box first-person shooter.
Yeah.
It's like, this is like, in a lot of ways, one of the most interesting things that he could make. And I think by nature of what it is, like, there are a lot of problems with it. I think there are a lot of ways it could be better. It is overly indulgent. But, like, I don't know. I think it's kind of encouraging that somebody who has this much free reign actually feels like they're taking advantage of it.
It feels like a commentary on his own past without betraying it, without betraying his own legacy either.
And it is, sure, it's overindulgent, but it still felt genuine because I'm so invested in a lot of these people's careers. Like, dude, Norman Reedus was like in Mimic, Guillermo movie, like got him famous, and like Blade 2 as well. And then like on the other side, and then on the other side you have like Nick Refn, who started with Mads too in the Pusher trilogy. So you have all these like friends kind of just getting together to tell a story, and like, yeah, it is overindulgent, but it still feels genuine because they're all so close knit, and they wanted to tell the story that they wanted to tell.
That is the perfect word for it. You nailed it. Like, it is genuine. It is achingly genuine.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways, but I think that's why. And obviously, I can't speak for everybody. I think there will be people who genuinely walk away from this game completely repelled for very valid reasons. But I think that's why, like, no matter what the list of complaints that I come up with, I think that was something that attached me to it, where it was like, I see what you're trying to do it, and you're approaching it so sincerely that it's kind of hard not to admire. I don't know. I agree.
I agree, yeah.
Can I go back to a point real quick? We were talking about like
absolutely.
the repetition of like deliveries.
Yeah.
I think something that could have helped was like the diversity of the delivery. Like the missions I liked were really weird things you had to do, like the pizza one where you just had to have it, like just something really small where you just had to have it like upright. So like you don't want to deliver a sideways pizza, or the one where you have to hold like the nuke in your hand. I love because you actually have to hold R2 to hold it in his hand. I'm like, this is really great stuff. I wish more than the deliveries had something a little like this. I think that would have helped alleviate a lot of the repetition
animals
for people.
can
with
put 'em
the
underwater.
to breathe.
Yeah.
I forgot about that stuff.
The second antimatter bomb, I
Yeah, I
actually
feel like if
I blew up.
they do more stuff like that, it would have helped alleviate a lot of the.
I intentionally
Right,
tried
I
to
think
blow up
that's a
them
great
and like
point.
see if it would do anything cool. And it's just like, no,
It just fades to white.
Yeah,
You
it's
hear
like,
it,
aw.
and then it says order failed. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Just those moments, Brad, where like you just have that panic or that like, oh man, I don't know how to do this. Yeah, totally. Sorry,
like 3 or 4 more different types of cargo would have gone a
Like,
long
I
way.
loved the carrier,
sure.
just something like that, because it was like a really small thing that just changed the way your delivery worked altogether. And like being able to ride it down a hill is just something really awesome. So there's just a few more things.
Of course.
Yeah, just Breath of the Wild
I tried
style.
getting on it on flat ground, and I was like, well, nothing's happening.
I just wish there was like a few more things like that to spice up the delivery.
It was funny because I like Damiani never used the carriers but the once because I just used zip lines for everything.
Sure,
I was
yeah.
like, oh, big order? Let me go build an
Yeah.
entire run of zip lines. I'll be right back. Like, that's how I handled those.
It is interesting, though, because we were talking about sequels and things that we want to see. And Brad, I think that it was such a great point that you brought up, where, like, Death Stranding 2, I could see them taking all the data and the feedback and just making more of those moments, refining it. And that's part of the reason I'm excited for Breath of the Wild 2 is, like, you have something brilliant here. I can't wait for you to see... for you to make it even more brilliant. Yeah.
Like I would rather see 1 or 2 DLCs for Death Stranding than a Death Stranding 2, personally.
Yeah, at the same time, like, it's two conflicting things where it's like...
DLC, does he?
I don't really think so. Not really.
The moon.
The moon? That'd be ridiculous.
Matt's
though, man.
promised. Matt's
that's
promised.
Kojima.
The moon is not that
He looked
great.
at the camera.
And
He looked at the camera.
wait, since you're his son, right? Like he was talking to you
Ian.
in
Oh,
that.
no. I don't
You're
think
his
that's-
son, aren't you?
Yeah, you're his
Sam
son,
is
but
Matt-
Sam is
sorry,
Matt's
Lou.
son.
People
Yeah.
keep thinking Lou is Sam.
Yeah,
I've seen that. That's
Lou
not
is a
right.
whole.
Yeah,
Lou is
yeah,
just
yeah.
a new random
People
bridge
understand
baby.
that, yeah.
But
The,
the bridge baby Mads was talking to is you.
Yes,
Lou,
yes,
yes.
yes,
And that's
yes,
why
yes,
you're
yes,
having
yes,
those.
yes,
Yeah, is Sam is
yes.
while you're having
Sorry.
those. Yeah, you.
So he's
not
literally
Lou.
talking to It's
So it's like Matt's
Promising
literally
you.
promised Sam you'd go to the moon.
Sam.
You can't just
Yeah,
tease
you
that.
just want to
Kojima.
On the
Put him
East
in
Coast
that
map,
out-
there's
his
one of those
mascot
lines that looks
Right.
like a teleport thing to another
Yeah.
zone. It's going somewhere else, and it's not going west.
Fragile could do it.
Where are we going?
Yeah, she could.
The Kojima Productions logo, dude.
Yeah,
when
it's a
the game
space
started,
mess-
was a 10
It's on the moon
out of 10.
with like a. I
was like, this is-
octopus
the-
or something
when
on
I
the
played it.
moon. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
just like, the flag and
And
stuff.
the-
I was like, this is
MTV,
better than
yeah.
all of Hollywood's intros.
from
like,
Sapiens to Ludens.
Ian, I kind of agree with you because, like, on one hand, I want to see a Death Stranding 2 or like the spiritual system, whatever, where it's like, okay, the social system, expand upon it, make
Yeah.
it even more fascinating. I want that, but then I'm like, the best part of this is just how wild and weird and this new direction that it wants to push it in.
Well,
so
it's-
I kind of want both things.
It's a really interesting experience, this game, because having played through the entire thing, I'm so happy I played through this entire thing. I feel no desire to do this again.
No.
In this game over again, or even a sequel. Like, if a sequel came out that was basically the same gameplay loop, I would be like, I mean, I'll play it because it's Kojima and part of our job and whatever, but like, I wouldn't be as excited or curious about it. Maybe, I mean, who's to say? But like, this is a weird game because we beat it, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, and it feels like January when I beat. Like, my memory feels the same of this game as it does about like Resident Evil 2 remake. It's weird. It feels so distant for
I
me.
just feel like there's so much going on in Death Stranding, though, so
Yeah.
it's like easy to forget some things.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
like Resident Evil 2, like it's
very
not,
simple,
It's
yeah.
not really about it's not about the story, dude.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh, there's like some
That's
zombies.
all right, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like just messing around in chapter 15 is enough because
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
like I don't really have any desire at the moment to rewatch Game of Thrones because like no, I know all the secrets. It's like
Yeah.
I think having that mystery is a
Sure.
big reason from going to chapter.
Yeah. And like the weird thing with this game is like the ending felt so final and it felt so good when he burns the cuff and frees Lou, and then especially the end of the credits little bumper where he says Louise. I get goosebumps even just thinking about it, just because it's such a sweet little weird moment. I don't know, but like him being free, like Sam Porter Bridges being free and deciding to just like be a dad, is the sweetest, most heartfelt kind of moment in this game for me, and that's why a 2. I would hope at the least it wouldn't star Norman Reedus.
I think that's fair.
My
But I
favorite
would
thing
love
is
to
when a
find
sequel is like,
Yeah.
it's a sequel, but you don't know it.
Yeah,
You know?
like that's something I would love. Like
Yeah.
the sequel to Death Stranding takes place like 300 years
Yeah.
later.
It stars
Well,
Jeff
the
Keighley.
You don't even
sequel,
realize,
Yeah.
the sequel begins with you as Louis. You're taking Norman Reedus' body to the incinerator.
Oh my God.
Now
God.
that's-
Yeah.
You are
That's-
so right.
God of
dude.
War
That's a
vibes
And
That's
or
it'll
something.
be like
You're
it'll be on the moon,
Louise.
some interstellar.
Oh my
craziness.
God.
And he's
We've got to take America to the stars.
Yeah, like whoever's the president now, or
The planet's falling apart.
deliveries with zero gravity, man. That's where it's at.
United Cities of Earth.
Yeah.
And you're like you're just like running away from the mules. You're like, you're not gonna get.
So cool.
Some,
Dude,
like,
playing as
crazy aliens.
Louise. Oh man, damn.
Trying to deal with the
Burning
BTs
Norman
and
Reedus.
zero gravity.
Yeah.
That's a thing. Real quick, one thing, especially in chapter 15, made it really apparent. Pet peeve. Really hate how the game. It was cool at first, but how everything has to stop to load
Yes.
the BTs in with the
Oh,
little
every time.
with
Very
your sensor.
repetitive.
I was like, that's why I love the zip lines. It bypasses all that.
Yeah.
Even when you go through it, it doesn't freeze you. I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
But to like BTs became less of a threat after a certain point in the game, especially when you get the cuff.
Almost immediately.
When you get the cuff link, yeah. I mean, once you realize you can just you just don't run into them. You can actually
Right.
just run through it and stuff, as long as you're not hauling too heavy of things. But literally at the end when you get the cuff thing, it's just like stealth kill, stealth kill, stealth kill. This is nothing. I really wish there were more claustrophobic environments with them
Sure,
as well,
enclosed
because
areas.
they kind of hint at it with the city ruin parts,
Yeah.
but it's
Love
still a
that
little
part.
open enough. But
part was
there's
cool.
enough kind of
Like
enclosures.
if you went inside one of the
Yeah, like-
settlements and BTs
Yes.
got inside it or something.
like just in a building setting, like
Yeah.
we're in an office building, and it's
Lab.
like you got ceilings, you
Or an
got
apartment
doors, like
complex
they're
or
gonna
a
make
hospital,
noises.
yeah.
the lab
like,
artificially
yes.
creating BTs, bioweapons.
I just need a little bit more of that.
But
I feel.
that feeds into also like the sameness of all the missions, you know, because you don't ever go like all the distribution centers are the same building. You know,
I was so frustrated with the BTs because they give you the cuff, they give you the grenades, and it's like, cool, this is gonna get more exciting. And it's like the very first thing I could do immediately, holding your breath, as long as you don't suck at holding your breath,
yeah.
it is not a big deal.
Same as the mules. Like punching is
I
enough.
didn't even I just took the motorcycle and just drove through them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like done.
Which backfired
There was
on me like
one
twice. Yeah.
time near
Yeah.
the very end of the game when I tried to do that and then just got sucked
Sucked
down.
down.
You ran right
They
into
took the
one.
motorcycle.
You just gotta not go complete full
most-
speed and just pay attention to the sensor.
To me, the
noise,
most
yeah.
annoying part was in Chapter 2. There's that area right near where you build the first bridge, like just east or whatever of the first distro center, where there's always the little BT thing by the river.
Yeah.
That was the single most annoying BT
I have a quick
section.
question.
It's like, come on, weather change.
And then the one by the junk dealer got a little annoying going back and forth, but
MGS5 had some weird multiplayer nuke stuff that was discovered way later. Do we think
There's something in it like that?
Yeah, because again, when the game ends, it's like, hey, go do some deliveries and hang out. And I remember asking you, I was like, should I keep going? You know, credits rolled. This seems like the end, kind of a new game, not a new game plus, but like a point in the game where you can now just go 100% it.
Possible.
the weird thing for me,
I'm
like
wondering if there's more.
the thing I want to do in my game is complete all the roads. That to me is like the thing I'm like, yeah, let's make these roads.
But
which
then
is
they'll just
weird.
get like time
They'll
fold
get
away,
time
right?
fold away.
Yeah.
I don't know how fast that is or how because I think you can contribute materials to keep the
Yeah, you
road
can. You
sections
can repair it.
going.
Yeah.
But yeah,
When it comes to Death Stranding and Kojima, to answer your question, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. You're right.
Maybe.
You're right.
Depends how
Maybe.
he's feeling.
if there was
Maybe.
time, yes. If there
Yeah.
wasn't, no.
Maybe.
Well, geez, we've talked for an hour and a half about, and I'm feeling like we covered most of the bases, which is a little shorter than I thought it would be. But
Shout
is
out-
there anything that anyone wants to say otherwise?
Shout out to smiling ear to ear anytime Guillermo was on screen. Just so jolly. Even though it wasn't his voice actor, obviously.
Yeah.
Just
Did
so
a good job, though. I mean,
fun hanging out with Guillermo in a video game.
Yeah.
That was a
And
treat.
he was like your Otacon.
Yeah. I was bummed, though, that, again, trailer woes, that entire segment of him
Dude,
with the baby was a
don't-
full trailer.
yeah.
All the beginning.
I was like, I've already seen
stuff.
this.
Yeah.
This is 70% of the way into this
Yeah.
game. Why have I seen all of this already?
I think when it came to trailers, Death Stranding was hard because obviously the same thing happened with Metal Gear Solid 5, but the rationalization that I had was like, oh, well, they just didn't have enough story for MGS5,
Right.
so what are they going to
Yeah.
show?
Yeah.
So I think that gave me some extra security in my brain where it's like, it's okay to watch this trailer. Like, maybe don't watch the 55 minutes of gameplay.
Right,
Watch,
which I certainly didn't
watch
do.
the trailer. No, don't. Never,
Never.
Never.
Watch one Kojima trailer.
Watch
It's
the
my
first
limit.
one.
First
The
Kojima
first one?
trailer, and that is it.
Because the first one is just the concept. They haven't actually
Yeah.
done anything to spoil
Yeah.
yet. Also, like the timey-wiminess of the 5 people in the sky being your friends from the end of the game.
Yeah.
Like, I don't fully see an explanation for that in the narrative because they show up at the very beginning when Fragile and you were in that cave.
I don't
They're
get
in
why
the
they show up
sky.
earlier. At the end, I was like, oh, they're trying to call you back. But like,
Which was
yeah,
cool.
they're earlier. They're all
Yeah,
like,
they're in the sky at the
thought it was
beginning of the
referencing-
game.
I thought it was referencing the extinction entities and the fact that there were 5 previous ones.
that too.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
But like,
That's-
but like, very clearly at the end, maybe in the beginning they were the entities, and then at the end it's your
was.
friends. That's
because
possible.
it seemed to
They're all
Yo.
extension
the
entities.
imagery,
Wow.
the imagery and the way that they talked
Yeah,
about the extinction
yeah.
seemed to line up perfectly.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like anything I say about this story, it's like that might be wrong.
Maybe.
but
Yeah.
that is how I
Never know with Kojima.
that is how I interpreted it.
Yo,
is that they were
EE.
related to the extinction.
I was-
Emmerich reference.
Emmerich, dude.
I was very pleasantly surprised at how much the narrative actually came together, though. At the end, like,
I mean,
pretty much everything was explained, made
Yeah.
sense. You know, I could follow it more or less.
Beaches
You
are
know, it was,
Inception.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
I was following it, but I always felt 1 or 2 steps behind, which I'm fine with.
Well, to me, I just felt emotionally 1 or 2 steps. Like there was the scene.
Yes,
the scene
that's
that
a
reaches
good way
out to
to-
me was when you're like slow mo running along the beach with Amelie, and I'm just like, I don't care about this person. Like I don't care about Amelie at all. And I don't believe that Sam does either. Like, and for a second I was like, okay, is she his
He's,
wife?
like,
and then it's like,
told he
no,
should
he's
care
not.
about her
Right.
a lot of the time.
And it's like,
But like he didn't really know her,
right.
Even
And
though
Bridget
like, she
was
raised
your
her.
yeah.
raised
Bridget
him?
was like
Because-
your mom,
is it-
kinda.
Yeah, is it because she gave him back life?
I-
Have a baby, maybe something kind of like.
Yeah.
Well, that's what made him.
Connection.
Weird
That's what
connection.
made him a repatriate, which is a little
Yeah.
weird because the way Amelie talked about it was like, I made you a repatriate and screwed up reality. But then like there's reference to other people being repatriates as well. So I'm like, okay, well, how did they become repatriates? Is Amelie just making other repatriates? Like, what's going on?
Multiverse,
A lot of
bro.
questions.
Yeah. Where's Vati Vidya's got to do
Dead
it?
man who first one said like there are multiple. Like you made it sound like in his
He
explanation
said,
that there's
yeah.
like you're.
Well, because Higgs is one, I guess, probably.
Yeah.
And like there are a few others, like, and they talk about it casually, where it's like this mission requires a repatriate, and it's like, okay, well then you must not be the only one. But then later in chapter whatever, Amelie's like, I brought you back from life. It's like, okay,
Except when they go to like the deepest Inception level, and they're like,
Yeah.
"You die here, it's
yeah,
game
right,
over."
it's game over. I'm like, damn it, Higgs. But I mean, maybe it's just anyone who dies and comes
Yeah.
back is a repatriate. Like if you have a heart attack and then come back, but then like Hartman isn't. He even says I'm not a repatriate, and that's why I need to resuscitate myself. So it's like, well, what the hell's going on?
We need the email that explains the history.
Yeah.
of Patriots.
I'm sure it's in there. I
The
didn't read.
repatriates.
I burned out
the
on
lale,
reading those.
the re-lale-lule-los.
There wasn't enough corpse
Read
disposal.
the Higgs journals
Yeah.
if you get,
Oh,
if you get a
okay,
chance.
okay.
Okay.
I wanted one of the corpse to like start moving while
The
I was
white
carrying
text
it
on
too.
black. I thought that would happen.
Yeah.
Wiggle.
Question then. So if you kill someone with an actual like
Yeah.
lethal weapon, do they come back as like a BT? They're talking about them going necro.
I think it's insta game over, right?
It might be.
I didn't
It wa-
shoot
you know
anyone
what'd
with
be
like a
cool?
gun.
body, right?
Well, I was
Isn't that
gonna
the whole
say
thing?
because I wanted to play through non-lethally even before I realized that there was a good story reason to do that. I was wondering because there's another incinerator
Yeah,
over
there
on
is.
the way to Mountain Knot for no reason, and so I was wondering like maybe if you kill someone you have to
I'm
get them to
Pretty
an
sure if you
incinerator.
kill someone, you have a time limit to take them to the incinerator, or
'Cause
it does
that's
the flash
cool.
the white like void out happens.
Yeah, otherwise a void out happened.
Pretty sure this game like people are streaming
beginning
and,
of
like,
the
they
game-
wanted to try it and they did void outs.
Oh man, that'd be
Yeah.
sick if they turned like to like a went all necro or something. And there's just like a BT there now forever wherever they died.
Don't
Well,
think
'cause
that
they go
happened.
necro-
No, I don't think it does, but that'd be awesome.
They go necro and void out like a nuke first,
Yeah.
and then become a BT. I think. So like. Man, how hardcore would it be if you killed someone and then it voids out that area and like literally everything that's in that area is just destroyed?
DLC, you play as the BTs.
Dude,
Yo.
play as the corpse
Multiplayer mode.
disposal unit, man. I
They're
wanna
all
beat
dead.
the-
Yeah, you like
yeah.
The day in the job.
Kind of a cool moment when you realize that that guy is that dude's brother.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Igor? Yeah.
I love that whole
Well,
scene.
and it's cool at the beginning
That
where you're like walking across Igor's ladder and climbing
Yeah,
up
yeah,
the
You
ladder.
do it at the end again.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Yeah.
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 Jeez,
Oh
man.
wait, maybe this was another little plot hole thing that I was wondering about is how can you communicate with Hartman and Mama with such visual fidelity before they're connected to the chiral network? Because like other people look all like scattered and crappy, and then you connect them to the chiral network. And someone makes an offhand mention of like, we're using the old wired system, so maybe they're
Probably
just
just
on the
better
old
tech,
wired
yeah.
system.
Something
Hartman's
like that.
lab was so legit.
Because Hartman, yeah.
Some sick house.
Yeah.
It was really cool that, and I love how they presented this when he's on the other side and you're just like in his
Loved
area
that.
and you
That
have to
was
look at
great.
You just have to look at stuff.
So fun.
A little bit of a
And his
bummer.
little spa upstairs, the hot tub.
Yeah,
thing.
that was great. A little bit of a bummer in this game for me was I felt that we talked about this kind of in frame trapping game, but like I felt it discouraged exploration because, and that's part of why I probably didn't find this musician and stuff, because I found the roboticist, the geologist, Hartman's lab before I had anything, Luden's fan, before I had anything to bring to them, and they're just a shut door. And it's like, Hartman knows my character. Like at the very least, there should have been a cutscene where he's like, Sam, what are you doing here?
Sure.
Like, you know, like at the very least. But
Yeah,
like,
I think we also talked about this too
Yeah.
before.
I
at
mean,
some
maybe
point.
he was dead at the time.
Yeah,
when
like
came in.
I
It's
felt
like,
the same
"Ugh."
way. It's like I just
But,
got
like-
tired of trying to like go out in a random direction to find something
Yeah.
unless I could see I had a delivery for them
Right.
and like because I went to what was it Mama's place first and hi, I'm here, and no one answers. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a little weird. So
Which
I guess I
is-
can. Oh, and then it was the Keeley. I found this thing. I didn't realize you had to find an item to deliver. It
open,
wasn't like
yeah.
in a mission. I learned later you can just pick up something and that's intended,
Yeah,
and that
so-
will start it. It was a little confusing, so I didn't unlock Keeley to like almost the end of the game.
I
ran
was-
into the same thing. I didn't see Keeley because I sort of agree with what both of you were saying. I was a little bit confused. The way that the game was presenting itself to me, I was like, oh, okay, cool. There's optional stuff and optional people to meet, but like, you will find out about them through terminals. Like I kind of got into this like main quest, optional quest mentality. And so when you were like, oh, I think I was talking to you about Keeley, we were like, oh, you just have to go and deliver this thing to him. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't
Well, and
realize that. Or I guess I just wasn't as clear on you can stumble upon things as well as I would have liked. And obviously, like I think part of that is the responsibility of the player, but I felt like I was just kind of being conditioned in a different way.
Maybe if there was more like rare packages like that,
Sure.
then you would be on the lookout more, I guess.
When I was first playing, I had a package I went to Luden's fan, didn't open, and because of the trailer or whatever at E3 or at Game Awards, I knew, okay, this is Keeley probably because it says fan and it's just so weird. But like and then I found something for Luden's fan, but then I lost it. And I was like, oh no, now I can never unlock Keeley, you know. And then luckily I found another package and
Yeah.
understood how the game worked. But it is weird because to me it feels like it's not even an open world game. It's like it's a linear sandbox with wide maps that is more of just like a little spider web where you only go on certain paths, kind of.
Yeah.
I learned that lesson the hard way when I tried to go over like the first mountain because the map like it was like it showed you the outline and it was just like the black areas I would get to fill it in. Like the northeast of the eastern coast.
Sure.
I was like I should be able to go up here. Look how much empty space. And I was like trying to go over the mountain and Skyrim style, it's like nope, invisible wall, like go back down. I'm like trying to cheese it. Oh, let me go around the coast, like infinite like red water, which is the one like it'll make you paddle, and then like it removed my paddling controls and just sent me right back to the edge. I'm like, oh really? I was like, why is this all over here? It's open and stuff like.
Which at least that feels a little more contextualized in the world. The hard capital I capital W invisible wall was a bit much, especially by that waterfall.
There's the one
in the middle of the map.
too. There is a path from like behind Keeley, the Luden's fan area, to the incinerator. There is that one path, but like those mountain ranges at the very beginning, not the northernmost, but the middle ones, like you can't go over them on that one. You have to go through that passage, and it's like unless they're low enough towards like the east coast where like the BT areas and the marshlands right there. It was just. There were times where I liked it. It was like you can get a little bit creative, you can try and go around stuff, but there were clearly times that were trying to like bottleneck you. You need to experience this thing. There's a BT encounter here. You've got to go this way. You've got to see it. And it's like, okay.
Or it was frustrating. Like there was one part where it was by Mountain Knot. It was when I was going to the photographer, I think. There was a thing where the time fall just wasn't gonna stop, and I was trying to use the weather report, and I waited in a time shelter someone built like 6 times.
Yeah, that
and
happened to me.
Yeah,
Very
stressful.
Yeah, and then a bunch of my stuff started time like ladders and stuff around the world, it was like, oh, some of your stuff is gonna break. Like early game stuff, it was like your ladder broke, and I was like, okay. I could like feel my own progress coming back at me as all the time fall of the early part of the game was going away, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess this is like a I have to fight a thing moment because the rain's not stopping.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, sometimes really bothers me.
It,
But
it fights against the other thing the game is trying to do a little bit.
right, where it's like, why'd you even give me weather? Because the only times I tried to look at the weather were times where the game was like, the rain's not going to stop.
We talked about Conan, we talked about Keeley. I didn't see him, but did you know
Sam
Lake?
Lake.
Yeah,
I didn't
Sam
see him
Lake.
either. Where is he?
The only one I didn't find was Sam Lake.
I didn't find him either. Where is
hidden,
he?
deeply hidden.
Did you find him down
because
Some of the
I
credits. That's all.
because I really
Where the hell are
combed
you,
the
Sam
first
Lake?
2 areas. I got like 6 or 7 stars, like in the early areas. I 5-starred those things, and then by the time he's probably in the last area because by the time I got there, I was like,
Yeah,
all right, let's
burned
go
out.
mainline.
gives you.
I know.
A dimensional rift.
Yeah.
A portal
So I
gun.
can't. So bummed
So
I
you
missed
give
that.
you, like, Max Payne's jacket or something.
Yeah.
He gives you a shotgun, dude.
It's just the Max Payne 1 face.
Low poly.
It's like floating downstream.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, yeah.
My favorite part of this game, they did it again. They did it a couple times. They should have at least just done this. The one time was the Guillermo head on the baby.
Oh, yeah, they did that a lot.
Oh my god, that moment, the first time it happened, was the best.
The part when I don't know if you guys saw it, but if you soothed BB every time, there's one part where she like smashes her head against the glass and then like busts through it, and Sam is like, ah! Like,
Oh,
that
Yeah,
was really
That
cool.
happened to me like 4
Yeah.
times.
I
Oh, really?
did that
happened to
one.
me, like,
Yeah.
I
went-
did it every time, and I was like, all right, this is repeating.
It's just
Guillermo.
I went to the mirror, and there was one random time where like Higgs just popped up. Like,
Oh, I didn't see
yeah.
that.
Oh.
That's sick.
That's a good one.
It's funny when he like
didn't see
winks
that
at
one.
you and
Yeah.
stuff. And I found, I don't know how you get this, I don't know how, but I found I was in dire straits and I used somebody else's long range motorcycle, and it had Ride with Norman Reedus on AMC decals on it.
Yeah.
And so I was driving on it, and then Norman Reedus had a voice line where he's like, "Man, this is quite a ride." no, he's like, "Man, this is a good motorcycle. It should be on Ride with Norman Reedus," is what he said. It should be on Ride with
That
Norman
is
Reedus.
amazing.
Dude.
It was hilarious.
I want Deacon's bike in it.
Yeah. Oh, Sony Bend put out a really good tweet, some art with Deacon and Sam Porter Bridges both
Oh,
on motorcycles
hell yeah.
riding. They're like, hey, congratulations, Kojima. That's
awesome.
I love stuff
Make
like
it happen,
that.
dude.
It's so funny. But yeah, any other thoughts on Death Stranding now that we can spoil everything?
It is weird that like just waiting for Death Stranding for so long, having it be such an enigma for so long, having it still kind of feel like an enigma. Like it's interesting.
Yeah, I really like this game. It definitely has flaws, but it was such a crazy experience of me going through this game. It's something I've never done before.
Yeah.
And like whatever Kojima does, man, I just like want him to do whatever he wants to do next. I don't necessarily need something like you have to do this. I just want him to do whatever he wants.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah, so many flaws, but I mean, same as all of you have said, just really glad I played this game because in 2019 it is hard to find new creative things, and so many times playing this game I had the feeling of like, oh, this is just so original. This is just so
Yeah.
unique. Like,
Yeah.
you can be really reductive about it and be like, oh, well, it's kind of like this, but as a whole, Death Stranding felt extremely original and unique.
A big budget game. Like you
Yes.
get a lot of like
Yeah.
experimentation in
Yeah.
games, but like as a huge game like this, it's like awesome.
It sounded like you said Del Stranding.
Del Stranding.
Del Stranding.
Like-
Del Taco.
I heard
Del
Del
Taco.
Conspiracy
Oh.
theory. You think
Death
like
Stranding.
Guillermo del Toro was the mastermind behind this.
Del Stranding.
Del Stranding.
A new genre in video. Damiani, any last thoughts?
Just Kojima games don't always happen very often.
Yeah.
And I look forward to these types of events. And no matter good or they've never been awful,
Right.
but they have always been at least good. And I will say that they've always been a pleasure to play through one way or another. And you don't, as I said, don't get to do this many times. So it's like always such, I I want to say like a gift because I don't want to do it, but
Yeah.
it's one of those moments where like you don't really get to do this that often, and like this feel really good
Special.
that I got to do another one because in some timeline Kojima isn't making games anymore or something
Right.
like that, and yeah, as you said, just unique, different. It has similar things, but at the end of the day, it was just like nothing was quite like this. And I love playing in just indulging myself in a game like that because they just don't come very often.
Yeah.
Before you give your final thoughts, because I'm always about sequels and franchises, like give me more Marvel movies, give me more Resident Evils, because like it's easy to think about and piece it together what a sequel would look like, but for a brand new IP,
Yeah.
that's what do you imagine?
I want new IPs. Everything Kojima Production does, I want it to be a new IP.
I think a lot of the reason why these franchises get to the point that they are is because they felt so fresh and groundbreaking. Like thinking about Metal Gear Solid, like what Metal Gear Solid 1 was, and the Wild Ride that was Metal Gear Solid 2, and then the Wild Ride is Metal Gear Solid 3. Like the reason why they built up such a legacy is because they felt bold. And I think that's kind of what is happening with Resident Evil right now. Where like Resident Evil 7 is a really exciting game. Resident Evil 2 Remake is a really exciting way to do a remake. And so I think that is what is more important to me, I guess, rather than just like, yeah, you know what it is. Like you don't want to fall into that feeling too quickly.
And it's funny too, like with a Kojima game, you expect the story to be weird and crazy and out there and wild, but like it's funny to now have played Death Stranding where I feel like the thing that is more shocking to me is that there's a game where this is what you do, like, is the weirder thing than like the Kojima story, kind of, like the fact that if you're really not politely boiling this game down to what you do, it's like one thing: you just deliver packages, and like that's pretty much it. But it somehow is still kind of fun, and the vibes are really cool, and like I think. It didn't succeed at everything, but I think on the whole it's a success just because it exists. And like I'm grateful for it. But yeah, what do you all think? I'm sure, I don't know, is the internet tearing itself apart about this game, or is everyone kind of just like, yeah, it's pretty cool?
Pretty brutal. Pretty brutal.
Has it?
Yeah, pretty brutal.
Because everyone,
There's
again,
hot takes everywhere because it just came out.
Everyone
most-
needs
give it
this
some
game
time
to
to
be
settle.
a binary.
At
where it's like,
at this moment, it's boiling.
yeah.
I've seen
sure,
seen
like,
praise
whatever.
and criticism.
Yeah, which is deserving.
Man,
but-
we're like boiling over because we had the Blizzard thing, and then Death Stranding came out. And now we got this Pokemon controversy that we're riding.
What's the
wave.
Pokemon controversy now?
Oh, don't
the
ask.
yeah.
Don't ask.
Oh,
Don't
Lord.
ask.
Don't ask.
But yeah, boiling is a good descriptor for
Boiling.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think we're filming this on Tuesday. I think we're going to put it up on Friday. You're seeing this on a Friday or later. So who knows where this will be in the zeitgeist 3 days from now. But yeah, I don't know. I ain't mad.
The question is, where is this game going to be in 10 years? A long forgotten memory or
Yeah.
still talked about?
I think it'll be mentioned, probably, But, like, we'll be on his new
I think
tip.
it'll be more talked about than some of his other works, like Zone of Enders and stuff like that.
Oh, sure, yeah. Kojima's still Kojima, Like, he's always going to... The pantheon of Kojima will be,
Yeah, wherever he goes, man, it's
Not
gonna be
forgotten.
wild, baby.
I wonder if he's going to make a horror thing. Because PT is the damn scariest thing that's ever happened.
I hope he's on that ride show with Norman Reedus.
Oh my
That's
God.
what I really hope.
Yeah, we need that episode.
That's what I'm
Do you
hoping.
imagine Kojima just on the back of a motorcycle holding his arms around Norman
He gives a
Reedus'
thumbs up, dude.
where he's just like, yeah,
We need this.
AMC, make it
Yeah.
happen. I've never heard of that show until it was in this game with all this
me
hilarious,
too.
Until you-
hilarious
great
product
marketing.
placement.
Until
Yeah.
you took a dump.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
aired after like Walking Dead, so I knew about it. 'Cause,
Oh,
like,
okay.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, the product placement in this, I didn't think it was like, it didn't make me mad. It made me laugh. Like, I was like, yeah, it's clearly kind of played for a joke, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, whatever. Death Stranding, what a bizarre, funny little game. Thank you all for talking about it. I'm glad we finally get to talk about it. Review copy provided by PlayStation. Bye.
Spoiler mode, final warning, spoiler mode activated.